The sea was angry that day, the kind of fury that stripped men of their courage and ships of their pride. In the spring of 1900, a small Greek vessel called Theotokos battled the violent winds of the Aegean. On board were hardened sponge divers from the island of Simi, men who lived between air and death, risking everything for a living that never promised mercy. Their captain, Dimitrios Kontos, had seen storms before, but this one was different. The sea heaved like a living thing, waves taller than masts crashing over the deck. With no choice, he steered his fragile ship toward the nearest refuge, a jagged, barren rock in the open sea, known as Antikythera. Few dared approach it. Fewer still had ever left it willingly. For 3 endless days, the crew sheltered in the island's small bay, the wind howling like a curse through the cliffs. When the sea finally calmed, the men were restless. One diver, Elias Stadiadis, suggested exploring the deep waters nearby to pass the time. Maybe, he joked, they'd find a new sponge bed to make the misfortune worth it. Kontos agreed, half amused, half hoping luck might finally smile on them. Elias suited up in the heavy scaphandro, the new diving gear of the age. The brass helmet gleamed faintly under the morning sun as his crewmate sealed it shut and began pumping air through the long hose. Slowly, he sank beneath the surface, his silhouette vanishing into the blue depths. At first, all was calm. The seafloor appeared empty, dotted with coral and seaweed. Then, a shape, and another. Elias swam closer, and his heart stopped. There were bodies everywhere. Men, horses, tangled limbs half buried in sand, faces frozen in agony, pale and eroded. Elias screamed, his voice lost to the deep. He tugged the signal rope in blind panic. When the crew pulled him up, his body shook violently. They removed his helmet, and he gasped for air like a drowning man. His eyes were wide, terrified. He stammered in broken Greek, "They're down there. Bodies. So many." The captain frowned. Elias wasn't bleeding, but his voice trembled. Kontos suspected nitrogen narcosis, the diver's madness caused by pressure at depth. But curiosity got the better of him. Against the crew's protests, he decided to dive himself. Moments later, he too descended into the same haunting silence. His air hose hummed rhythmically above as the world turned darker, colder. When his boots hit the seabed, he turned on his light and froze. Elias hadn't seen corpses. He had seen statues. Dozens of them. Scattered like fallen soldiers. Men carved from marble, horses of bronze, their limbs twisted, broken, yet eerily lifelike beneath centuries of decay. The seabed shimmered with fragments of gold, glass and pottery, the remains of a ship that had carried treasures lost to time. Kontos stared, awestruck. He realized what lay before him, an ancient Roman wreck, buried for 2 millennia, now unveiled by chance. The rotting flesh Elias described was the green patina of bronze, the coral growths clinging to marble torsos that had once adorned palaces. When he resurfaced, his words came slow and reverent. "It's not death down there, it's history." Days later, the Theotokos sailed to Athens. Instead of plundering their find, Captain Kontos did what no one expected. He reported it to the authorities. The Greek government, electrified by the news, launched the first state-sponsored underwater excavation in history. For months, the same sponge divers who once risked their lives for scraps of coral now risked them for relics of the past. The depths were merciless. 1 diver died, 2 were crippled, but what they brought up would shake the world. From the bottom of the sea rose a forgotten age. Bronze statues, glass amphorae, marble gods, treasures unmatched in beauty or historical value. But among the priceless art, there was one small corroded lump of bronze, dismissed by everyone as a worthless fragment. It would sit in a museum for years, drying quietly. And when it finally cracked open, it would reveal something the world was not ready to believe, a mechanism so advanced it would rewrite the history of science itself. For more than 2 years, the artifacts from the Antikythera shipwreck filled the halls of the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. Visitors came to marvel at the statues, gods frozen in motion, horses mid-gallop, marble faces eroded but still divine. Yet on a forgotten shelf in the storage room sat a lump of bronze no bigger than a brick, dull, cracked, and irrelevant. On the 17th of May 1902, a young archaeologist named Valerios Stais noticed something off. The corrosion on the object had split open, revealing not solid metal but teeth, gear teeth. He brought the fragment under a magnifying lens, and his heart raced. Inside was a lattice of perfectly cut bronze gears, locked together in a harmony no ancient artifact should have possessed. It looked like the inside of a clock, but clocks of that complexity didn't exist until 1,000 years later. When Stais presented his discovery, scholars laughed. "Impossible," they said. The ancients were philosophers, not engineers. They filed it away as a curiosity, a coincidence, perhaps a 17th century navigational tool that had fallen into the wreck centuries later. But Stais couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't a mistake of time. It was proof that someone, somewhere in the ancient world, had mastered precision beyond imagination. For decades, the object now called the Antikythera Mechanism gathered dust. It wasn't until the 1950 seconds that a British historian named Derek J. de Sola Price walked through the museum and saw the fragments. Where others saw corroded bronze, he saw a design. He spent the next 20 years obsessing over it. using early X-ray imaging to peer through the metal. What he found stunned him: 30 interlocking gears, each carved with microscopic precision. Some wheels had hundreds of teeth, meshing together in perfect ratios. It wasn't random, it was mathematics made mechanical. In 1974, Price published his findings, calling it the world's first analog computer. He theorized that it had been used to predict the positions of the sun, moon, and stars, a cosmic calculator built nearly 2,000 years before such things were thought possible. The world took notice, but many still doubted. The images were grainy, the mechanisms incomplete. The mystery endured unsolved, unaccepted, yet undeniable. Then, at the dawn of the 21st century, technology finally caught up with genius. A new team, the Antikythera Mechanism research project, used advanced 3D X-ray tomography to scan every fragment. The results left scientists speechless. Hidden beneath the corrosion was an entire mechanical universe. The device had a front dial showing the movement of the sun and moon across the zodiac, a miniature cosmos carved in bronze. A smaller sphere displayed the moon's phase, turning from light to dark as time passed. But the real marvel lay on the back. 2 spiral dials tracked the Metonic and Saros cycle systems ancient astronomers used to predict eclipses with astonishing accuracy. The mechanism could forecast solar and lunar eclipses decades in advance, and even account for the moon's irregular orbit using a tiny pin and slot system that sped up and slowed down the motion of its gears. It was mechanical poetry, a union of mathematics, astronomy, and artistry that rivaled anything produced in the modern age. The Antikythera Mechanism wasn't a toy or an accident. It was the culmination of Greek genius, the work of minds who refused to separate the heavens from human hands. Somewhere in the 2nd century BCE, an unknown craftsman had built a machine that mapped the cosmos, then watched as his masterpiece sank beneath the waves and vanished for 2 millennia. When scientists finally reconstructed it in full, turning the bronze dial made the heavens move. Each rotation brought the sun and moon across their paths, marking the passage of years long gone and hinting at a civilization whose understanding of time and the universe was far ahead of its era. The discovery rewrote history. It proved that ancient engineers could not only dream of perfection, they could build it. And as the gears turned once more after 2,000 silent years, the question whispered louder than ever: if this survived by accident, what wonders did we lose forever?